you were a bit of a bad boy back in the day, right? I seen your subject access request. You're a clean guy in regards to there's no beastie activity on that, but you do have a life, mate. You were in that world, should I say. Do you want to talk about when you first started to turn into a bad boy?
I mean, in no means I don't glamorise crime in. I don't glamorise crime in any way, shape, or form. I mean, we've all probably done something wrong in our life, except probably I've had an exciting part of my life, where I've got myself into a bit of trouble. I mean, one that I can talk about was when I got done for firearms, and when I got done for this for firearms, I mean, I realised straight afterwards, when you go to a job interview, and then you've got to explain to that new employer, about having a firearms charge on your record. I used to go to the interview. I used to be happy until when he says, "Oh, criminal record," and that's when I used to just get out of the chair and run out the door, because it's hard to explain a firearms charge, because people would expect you to do a bank robbery or physically going out to harm somebody, or using the gun in the mannerisms that to threaten somebody. I mean, in my case, I was working as a security guard in Telford for probably about 9 years, and I was specialised on building sites in Telford. And back then, it was in the town Shrewsbury that we had a contract with, and it was for a show home on a construction site. And people would sit back and think, "Oh, what? There's nothing to rob off a building site. I mean, you got the dumper trucks, you got diggers and stuff like that." But what we were actually protecting was the show home. The show home was probably worth about £189,000. If you had gone on to the site.
What year was this?
1997. And like I say, I spent 9 years as a security guard in the Telford area, and they put me on the site in Shrewsbury. Now, what had happened the night before, the guard that was on duty the night before, he got beaten to a fucking pulp by 4 guys that just leapt out of a transit van with baseball bats. And I mean, they'd done a really bad number on him. And the poor guy ended up in hospital for about 6 months. And they stole roughly about 80 grand's worth of stuff. So what I remember, the next morning I got a phone call saying, would I go to this Shrewsbury site? And I said, yeah, no worry, stick me down for Shrewsbury tonight. So when I went through to the other lads, I said, here, didn't you not get asked to go up to Shrewsbury? Yeah, but fuck that. The place got done over last night. I went, oh, well, no worries now. They dropped me off on the site. I think it was about 5 o'clock, and then the construction workers normally go home at 5:30. So I sat down, filled out the logbook, and went round on me patrol. All the construction workers had, left the site, so I locked up all the gates and secured the compound. And we were it was like a hut, which was roughly probably about 300 meters from the gates. And anyway, as the night went on, it was all quiet, and I thought to myself, each time I went back to the hut, I'd never sit down. I was always peering out the windows, and because of what happened the night before. So anyway, it came to 12 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden, this fucking white transit van burst through the fucking gates of the site and made its way up towards the hut, which at that point I was sitting in the hut. And the van stopped halfway between the gates and the hut where I was sitting. And I was like, oh, fuck, here we go. On that occasion, I had no radio. I didn't have a mobile phone. And the nearest phone box was about a mile away from the site.
Did you have a car?
Didn't have a car. Back then, they dropped me off at the site, and it was my own stupidity. I didn't pick up a radio from out.
And
the office.
how did you get home?
They came and picked us up in the morning. Like, they dropped us off at the site, and then picked us up in the morning. When our shift finishes. And I knew full well. I should have picked a radio up. At the least. Considering it was a high risk site then, because of what had happened the night before. Well, anyway, this van's halfway between the gate and the hut. So me being me, I fucking took a piece of paper and a pen, and I came out of the hut door, and I sneaked up to the tranny van, and they didn't spot me. I wrote down the registration. I dropped the piece of paper so I had to write the registration on my hand. And then I sneaked all the way back to the hut, and I went through the logbook from the night before. And I matched the registration on my hand to the registration that was written in the logbook from the night before. So at that point I thought, oh fuck, what do I do? Well, just at the back of the site is where one of my mates was living, and that's where I was staying for 2 nights. Because all I literally have to do is hop over the fence, and I'm basically on site. So anyway, I've hopped over the fence, gone in the house, jumped back over the fence, and gone back to the hut. Well, lucky for me, the guys, occupants in the van, didn't see me, because I took my high-vis coat off, and I put my black coat on. And all of a sudden, anyway, this van fucking well spun straight up to the fucking hut. So I know what I've just picked up. I've come out the doors, and I've gone up towards the driver's side, and there was like the sliding doors on the side of the van. That was just about to open. So I've managed to hold it shut, and then the driver's door was about to open. But all of a sudden, I've held back pushed back on the driver's door to shut it. I produced a fucking gun in my hand and put it straight to the driver's head. And I said, do you want to fuck, do you, mate? I said, get the fuck off my site. And to me, I thought, fuck. Well, to my relief, the fucking van spun off the fucking site, back out through the gates. And he went straight to the phone box, which was a mile away. Phoned the police. Bearing in mind they've just come to rob the site to take the other 100 grand's worth of stuff. Picked up the telephone, and they called the police and said the security guard's got a gun.
They phoned the police on you?
Yeah. They went straight to the phone box, which was a mile away, and phoned the police and said the security guard's got a gun. So I started walking back to the hut, and I pissed myself laughing. I thought, fucking
So
hell.
not only are the scumbags robbing a building site, but they're grasses too.
Yep. And I mean, I was walking back to the hut, and I was absolutely pissing myself laughing. You know, because I couldn't believe what had just happened. So anyway, no sooner had I got in the hut and I started writing the report, there was probably about 5 or 6 police vehicles crashed through the fucking site. came from all directions on the site. Well, between that and going back in the hut, I've chucked the gun into. There was like a big, massive metal like bin. So I've lobbed the gun into that bin, gone into the office, and started writing out the report. You know, to say that the transit van had just burst onto the site, and there was probably about 5 or 6 police cars that swarmed onto this site. Well, I've come out of the hut, pissing myself laughing, you know. And I've seen the car doors of these police cars fucking open. I could see them duck behind, and you know they had weapons trained on me. And then all of a sudden there was a big spotlight, fucking, you know, that shone straight into my face. I couldn't see anything, so I'm like, this pissed myself laughing. What the fuck's going on here? Well, then they were shouting, "Get down on the floor! Get down on the floor!" And I'm like, what the fuck? Are you not fucking joking? This is your final warning. Get down on the floor. I'm like, fuck. So anyway, I've had no choice but to sink straight to the fucking floor, and the armed officers come running up, handcuffed me behind my back, and um, pulled me up onto my feet, and where's the gun? Where's the gun? I'm like, what fucking gun? What gun? What are you talking about? And it was at that moment a sniffer dog went straight to the fucking bin and just sat down in front of the bin. And the officers pulled the bin down, and they were just about to put me into the back of the police car, and they pulled the bin down, and they searched in, and then they found it was a Howarth PPK. So
Is that one of those old style guns?
He's counted as a women's handgun. It's like really small. You got 7 bullets in the magazine, or you can have an extended magazine, which holds, I think it's about 17.
So
I mean, you can fill it in the palm of your hand. I mean, if you Google a Howarth PPK, it's an automatic. If you
what I'm
Google it, you'll see it will fit in. I mean, you can place it like that in your hand.
what I'm thinking is, Steve. What I'm thinking is here. Obviously, the cops let you away with that. You were robbed. You're a security guard, and you don't have a telephone, so you can't call them. You're miles away from any help. Obviously, they believed you.
The thing, like, they arrested me, took me down to the station, and obviously they interviewed me, and I said to them exactly what had happened. I said the night before, this gang had put the guard in hospital for a good 6 months. I said it's in the legal document in the logbook that we have to write in. That's actually used as a legal document if or when the people go to court. And I explained to them exactly what had happened. You know, that I took the registration of the van, matched it against the registration that was in the logbook. I knew then it was going to be trouble. And the mistake that I made was jumping over the fence, producing the gun to use as a deterrent. And the way I explained it to the police,
What?
I
What?
explained it to the police. I used the gun as a deterrent. And I actually use this phrase, like a scarecrow in a field, they deter birds. I use this gun to deter these crooks from stealing £100,000 worth of stuff. Well, needless to say, they charged me, and I ended up. My solicitor said I'll be lucky to get like three. You know, if I get 3 years out of this, I'll be lucky. I went, you fucking joking? I said 3 years. They said, yeah, because you used a gun.
Mate, are you serious?
Absolutely. I mean, but there is a twist to the tale. So
Dirty
anyway,
grass and robbers, aren't they?
we went to court, and they even had the audacity to turn up at court to give evidence against me.
What?
But the
Hold
police
on.
never once went to arrest them for putting the guard in jail.
Did your employer, when you, just a question, sorry, your employer obviously believed you?
Well, obviously, the managing director, the supervisor, and the manager all came to court.
This is no joke, Steve. If that happened in Ireland in 1997, those two them people that grassed you up are getting their legs blown out, like, because that is some of the most dirtiest grassing shit that I've ever heard in my life.
I mean, at the time, I was like, you can imagine what I was shouting. Go and fucking arrest them. They're the ones that stole 80 odd grand's worth last night. Now they've come to steal £100,000 worth of stuff. I was doing my job.
Mate,
you know, but
if
I done
you
it
had,
incorrectly. I should not have used a gun. But then, what was I supposed to do? You know, was
but
I
mate,
supposed
if
to
you,
take a battering and then take the 100 grand's worth of stuff and me get fired?
no, the thing about it is, right? First off, you probably should have had a radio on you, right? Second off, if you hadn't have grabbed that gun, would they have used it on you? Because they're
Definitely.
dirty.
I mean, they each had a baseball bat. There was four of
You
them.
you know they're dirty grasses, right? Because they've just done that, and you know they're willing to come in and steal that. More than likely, they're willing to get rid of somebody just to get what they want. So they're that way inclined. So you've done the right thing. I think. I think the only thing wrong you done there was not bring a radio with you. And I think in that situation, the best thing you could have done was just write down the registration and run.
Well, when it all went to court on the trial, you know, there was a lot of mitigating circumstances when it came down to sentencing that was used because my solicitor said to me, look at 3 years, you know, anything less is going to be a bonus. And the mitigating circumstances that was involved as to why I didn't get 3 years and I got 12 months was I was actually a security guard in a position to protect the property. I wasn't going out of my way to cause somebody trouble, you know, or to rob somebody or, you know, to threaten somebody's life as such as for a gain. Now, the second mitigating circumstances were that they turned up the night before and stole £80,000 worth of stuff. Now, my employer had to take some responsibility in this because he didn't make sure that I had a radio or a phone or any means of communicating. You know, so he had to take some blame as to my action because he should have made sure my welfare was taken care of. So, given the mitigating circumstances, and the judge did realise that you know they did rob the site the night before. In the end up after a week, I got 12 months imprisoned for it, and that was because I used a gun. If I'd done anything else, then I would have got away with whatever else. If I picked a brick up and hit them, you know, I would have got away with all of that. But because I
But it
used,
was their gun. It was their weapon. They showed up to intimidate you. Did they get any prison time?
well, yeah, the twist of the story was when I received my sentence, my managing director, the manager, the supervisor, put a counter in against them. So while I was doing my first 2 weeks in prison, the managing director had gone to the police. They had all the evidence they needed, you know, from my trial, that it was them that robbed the site the night before. They all three got arrested 2 weeks after I was in starting my sentence. They got arrested. They got put in front of the judge. They got charged, and they ended up doing, I think it was 5 to 7 years each.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Good
You know,
job.
so that was the twist in the story, and basically the judge did say to me, and I had to be careful when I was on the stand to the words I was using. I couldn't stand in front of him and say I wanted to scare him. You know, I had to use the word deter. That was something my solicitor pumped into my brain. He said, you use the word deter, right? And an example, like a scarecrow's in the field to deter birds, you use the gun to deter them.
Or what would have been even better, I think, in the moment I didn't realize it was either fight or flight, and I've never been put into that situation before where guys roll up with a gun and weapons. I thought I was going to be harmed, and at that moment I thought I was doing the right thing.
I mean, literally, the only thing that I'd done wrong was produce the gun basically, and
Let's face it, mate.
the judge
Those.
asked me. The judge asked me. He said, "Play back the scenario." He said, "Would you do the same again?"
Oh shit. Oh shit.
so
Oh
um,
shit.
so I looked at me managing director like that, you know, and I thought, I know what I want to say, you know, and I was going to say, yeah,
Mm.
I fucking would, you know, but my heart was telling me, look, you know, you would do the same, but this time you'd make sure I'd have the radio for communicating, so I could call the mobile patrol, and then they would then deal with it with the police. You know, I said I would do exactly the same, but without the gun, and
You
I'd
should have
use
been given a
my hand.
medal, mate. You should have been given a fucking medal. No, you've given you 12 months in prison. That judge is an absolute arsehole. He should have says, get this man out of court. And do you know what? He deserves, give this man a raise and give him compensation, and and pay for him to go on a holiday. He's just saved the building site from 100 grand and caught three notorious robbers, and they're trying to grass him up
Well,
under
the
no
thing was,
circumstances.
I mean, the managing director and the manager and the supervisor, they all turned up at court in their full uniform with like their pips and badges, and you know they wore medals on the jacket and everything. And um, they were asked, would I be re-employed? You know, when I do come out,
Fucking
and
right.
all of them gave me a glowing reference, and they said we're taking him on without a fucking shadow of a doubt. Um, because he's just saved us £100,000 of our insurance
Yeah.
claim. All right, they didn't agree with me using a gun. Obviously, they hadn't trained me to do that. I'd done that out of instinct. All right, I knew it was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. You know, but what else could I have done in that situation other than let them rob the whole site, put me in hospital like the other guard? Um, you know, so that's just like one twist, you know, in my life story.
And tell
Um,
me, tell me, how did explain to us how prison went? What was prison like for you?
um, but it wasn't my first time. I think I've only been in prison 3 times, and that was my second sentence. And I knew to the routine. I knew, you know, what to expect. You know, and you know how prison life is. And I mean, they put me into a like remand prison first. which is the one that I'd done the video on, which was the prison in Shrewsbury, where they put you in there for about a month and then they allocate you, to another prison for you to finish off like your sentence. And I think on that occasion, I got allocated to Stafford, Nick. So I would only do half of the sentence. So basically, I was in jail for 6 months, basically, from the 12-month sentence, because you only do half. But I'd already done a month on the remand jail, so I knew I only had 5 months, But anyway, in Stafford jail, there was one particular incident I do remember, and it kind of made me laugh because back then there was a guy who won the lottery called Lee Ryan, and he was and he was in Stafford, Nick. And one day we were going from the cell block to the library, which is like a little short walk, and you go past like an exercise yard. And on the way to the library, I recognised him, as being Lee Ryan, the fucking lottery winner. And there he was on a fucking sunbed like that, just fucking, just laying and chilling, thinking, fuck me, as soon as I'm out of here, I've got a fucking £1 million to go to. So I bumped into him, I had a quick word. I went, fucking hell, you're a lucky sod. How long you got left? I think he was serving 2 years.
For what?
I do believe it was a robbery.
Did he get the £1 million out of the robbery?
Well, when he got I think he earned some money from that. I mean, but when he got released from jail, he had these lottery winnings, to live on. So he was living a life of Riley in jail for the last 3 months of his sentence, knowing full well he was going out to like a life of luxury.
Mate, that's dangerous though. It depends what prison you're in. Like, I'm thinking to myself, if I was a guy that had nothing to lose, and I know this cunt here's got $1 million in the bank, I'm gonna take as much of that person as possible. Not saying I would, but I'm just saying particular, like if I'm that way inclined, I'd be thinking to myself, I'm gonna take as much off this fella as possible, especially if you don't have much getting out yourself.
I mean, I think another incident that I think was really, really funny, and I hit the front page, of the local paper for this one, and I don't think anybody in the world's ever done this, but I'm trying to think what I'd done wrong.
In every situation, you've done nothing wrong, Steve. Every situation you've went to prison, you've done nothing wrong. You've always been the hero.
I think it was something like misuse of electricity. I mean, I wired a few cables from like the outside lamppost into a dance hall, because I hired the hall, but I didn't hire it with electric. So I've used the fucking lamps out on the street to power out disco equipment, and that was the charge anyway. And
how long did you get for that?
Well, it's quite funny because just as the judge was about to pass sentence, I was, when you stand up and then the judge passes sentence to you. Well, as I stood up, the judge was just about to pass sentence. My phone rang.
Oh shit!
I took the phone out of my pocket. I said, "Hold on, sir," and I answered the call, and it was from at the time it was one of my lady friends. What's happened, Steve? I don't know. I'm just about to get sentenced. I'll phone you back after.
Oh shit! That's priceless. That's priceless.
So, I mean, the place was in stitches.
Was the judge laughing?
And the judge looked at me. He said, "I need to rethink this." And he went back out through his fucking doors. We all sat
What a
down.
wanker! Like,
My solicitor said to me, he said, fuck's sake. He said,
what a wanker of a judge. I could take you take a bit of crack with that. Like, you didn't murder somebody. Like, you took a phone call. You didn't mean to. It rang. Okay, you were stupid to answer the call, but I mean, judges. This is the problem, right? Judges are too far detached away from the actual people. Do you know what I mean? They're just that's funny to me. For me, maybe I couldn't be a judge. If somebody done that to me, I'd probably lessen their sentence just for making the day. Do you know what I mean?
well, I mean, this guy was ruthless. I mean,
What
because
did you?
he
How
went
long did
out,
you get?
he went out with a bad temper, and he came back, and his face was just red. You could see the anger. Um, he said, right. So I stood up. He said, right. He said, I was going to give you probation and community service. He said, I was then thinking about a 6-month sentence. So I stood there thinking, come on, just fucking get on with it, you know. And
Yeah, cunt.
even my solicitor had a grin on his face.
Yeah.
He thought you fucking idiot. And anyway, the judge turned around. He said, look, he said, because you've answered the phone in my courtroom, he said, I'm going to double your sentence. I went, you're fucking joking? And in the end, he gave me 3 months when really he was going to give me like 6 months probation. And for that, and to make it even more comical, as I was walking away, I was shouting out, "Thank you, sir! Thank you, sir!" Well, unbeknownst to me, in the paper the next day, it was right on the front page. Man answers phone just as sentence was about to be passed, and
Oh mate, that would be great to get that.
he gets double the sentence. And I mean, on that occasion, I went into the prison, and I was out within 2 days. You know, because I'd done 2 months on remand. So if you get 3 months, you only do a month and a half. But because I'd done 2 months, I'd basically completed the sentence.
You're
You
a
know,
lucky bastard, you are.
I mean, I don't glamorize crime. I mean, but this is, you know,
It's funny crime, Steve. Not the gun one, but this one, that's funny crime. And to be honest with you, it's harmless. Do you know what I mean? It
mm,
is harmless. Like that's a bit of crack, to be honest with you. And judges are too far detached away. That's to me, like, you know what I mean? It's a bit of crack. It should have brightened up his day. You know, he's judges are dickheads. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
see what it was back then. You know, and incidentally, I haven't been near a police station for fucking hell, about 13, 14 years now. And back then, there was two particular judges. There was one in the magistrates' court, and there was one in the you know, the next court up. You've got the magistrates, and then you've got the Crown.
Crown Court, yeah.
Yeah, the one in Telford was somebody called Browning, right? And there was a judge in the Crown Court at Shrewsbury, Manders, Judge Manders, the most two evilest bastard judges, right, you could ever imagine. Whenever I got put in front of them, for some reason, I don't think they liked me, you know, because they always gave me the top end of the fucking sentencing, like, sort of scale, you know, that suited the crime. And a story now about the Manders, top judge in Shrewsbury Crown Court. I mean, he's long retired now. But what he used to do in the morning, right? He'd have all the cases, you know, that he's got to see, and he'd sit at home eating his breakfast, right, and he'd put a figure in his mind, right. So what he used to, he'd be eating his breakfast, and say for argument's sake, he come up with 180. Now, when he got into work into the Crown Court, if he had 11 cases to see that day, right, he would divide the 180, right, between the 11 cases, and that's the amount of years he was going to give to each fucking person. And he would sit there at his laptop like this, at his laptop, fucking. I'll never forget. I'll
like a
never forget
snidey little nonce judge that he is.
he was the worst one. I mean, but somebody got retribution on him because he looked somebody up for. I do believe the guy was a fucking smack rat, and Manders gave him about 3 years in jail for aggravated house burglary.
Right.
And when this particular guy got out, I didn't agree with this, but I found some of it amusing. He burgled Judge Manders' home.
That's brilliant. I love it, mate. I swear to God,
Yeah, but he didn't stop there. He shot and pissed all over Manders' fucking bed.
that is, mate. Listen,
Now,
that's the best smackhead I've ever heard of.
see, the thing was with Manders, his son was hooked on heroin. Now, if you went in front of him for anything to do with drugs, especially heroin, he was sending you away for like double the sentence that you should receive. Now, they collared this guy obviously on DNA evidence, and this guy's lived a living legend, for the rest of his life in Telford and Shrewsbury. But when he got put in front of Manders, you could imagine what happened. Manders gave him 9 years just for burgling his house.
How was he able to take that case? Is that not a conflict of interest?
Well, that's what we were all saying back in the day, but for some reason, they allowed that. Now, that was something we could never understand.
That's like a
It should have been
manslaughter
another
charge.
judge. That was a big conflict of interest. I mean, I do remember the guy did go to an appeal, obviously on that purpose, and I think his sentence was reduced to something like 18 months. And then I do believe like 5 years after that, Manders retired.
First off, there's the old saying, the judge's son is the worst cunt imaginable, because you always hear it. Like I knew a lot of boys lived, there was a Protestant area away from me, and the cop's son was always the one that ended up the criminal. He was always the one, or she was always the one ended up on drugs or the criminal, because they just lived that life. And the fact that his son was a heroin addict, and the fact that ironically he would be burgled by a heroin addict and then shot and pissed on by a heroin addict, and then ironically, and not so ironically, but it was set up that he was going to be the judge for that guy's court case, and then give him 9 years, which you get 7 years for manslaughter. It just shows you, okay, he shouldn't have burgled him and it was bad what he done, but karma is a bitch. If you are bad to people, that comes around to bite you in the ass. And at the end of the day, the guy got 18 months, done half of that, and he appealed it, done half of that, and Manders at the end of the day, his legacy is the guy that got his house shot and pissed on and robbed by a heroin addict.
I mean, that's something I mean, the guy's a fucking legend. He always will be a legend till the day he dies, the lad that done it. But Manders was always known. You ever get put in front of him and you're gone. Because he, regardless of what anybody says, I mean, loads of people will tell you who's been in front of him. He's already got a figure in his head. All he does is divide that between the amount of cases, and that's how long you're getting.
I think there should always be like.
It's a strange way. So it's a strange way, to go about how to give somebody time. But this is what the guy was known to be ruthless.
I always think there should be two judges, because if you have one guy or one girl that's having a bad day, you always need somebody else to sort of back you up. You always need somebody else or somebody there to sort of has similar authority to say, look, I disagree with this. I disagree with your decision here. Can we reflect on this and maybe think about this again? Because if you have an asshole and a cunt like Manders, essentially what he's doing is he's picking on the weak and vulnerable. And do you know why they do this? That guy would have been bullied in school. He was probably a weakling. They couldn't get any women. They'd probably got drunk on 2 beers. That and essentially he just takes that out in the rest of the public. Fair enough, he is handing down the law to criminals, but at the same time, a fucking heroin addict. Do you know, the guy's got issues. The guy's got problems. His son's a heroin addict. I bet his son's a heroin addict because his dad's a cunt. Do you know what I mean? Excuse my language, but that's essentially why his son is a heroin addict, because his father Manders is the biggest prick that's ever lived.
I mean,
Do you know what I mean?
It was just biasness, because of
Yeah.
probably the way that his sons acted in his life, and the thought of his son being on heroin. He just straight away took a hating to anybody that went in front of him for drugs, especially those that is involved. If you got done for street dealing of heroin and got put in front of him, you're looking at 5 years. But if you put somebody in front of him, I mean, it was only towards the back end after the crime got committed on his house. If you was a burglar, it would let you off, sort of thing. Give you probation or community service. And if you got caught with, I don't know, say a tenner's worth of heroin, he'll sling the book at you even for that.